It was around 532 AD that the combined armies of the Aulikaras and the Maukris defeated the Huns. In this video, we will look at what happened to the Huns in the aftermath of this defeat. But in order to understand this, we have to first look at the different reasons that led to the defeat of the Huns. Although there are multiple reasons behind this defeat, but I think the most important reason is the weakening of the Hepthalite power north of the Hindu Kush. We all know that the Hephthalites were a major player that helped the rise of the Alkan Huns. These Hephthalites provided the Alkan Huns not only the military personnel but also horses. We know that they controlled a large part of the central steppe. So it was quite easy for them to supply these war horses to these Alkan Huns. So because of this military supports by the Hephthalites, we see that the Alkans rose in south of the Hindu Kush. Now how important this Hepthalite support was for the Alkan Huns can be seen from the accounts of a Chinese traveler named Songyun. Songyun, who met Mihirakula on the banks of river Jhelum in around 520 AD, he describes Mihirakula as someone who was installed by the Hephthalites. Although we do not have any evidence to say whether these Hephthalites really installed the Alkan Huns, but it does show that in the eyes of a foreign traveler, these Hephthalites were more of a master. And it shows that how important the role of Hephthalites was in the rise of the Alkan Huns. Now we can also argue that the Hepthalite support was partly responsible for the Hunnic victories that happened during the reign of Tormand. But this support would not last long, because what we find is that the Hephthalites were also struggling with their neighboring powers, and particularly the Sassanids. By around 530 AD, the resurgence of the Sassanids had begun, and with the accession of the Sassanid ruler Khusro I, we see that the old hostilities between the Hephthalites and the Sassanids were reignited. The pressure on the Sassanids increased significantly when Khusro I signed a peace agreement with the Romans. This meant that now the Sassanids were free to carry on campaign against the Hephthalites in the eastern border. Now if you look at this period, which is 530 to 532 AD, you will see that now the Hephthalites are preoccupied with the Sassanids. This means that they do not have enough resources to pass it on to the Alkan Huns. For the Alkan Huns, this was the period when they are facing problems with the Indian powers, particularly the Aulikaras and the Maukris. Now, we all know that it was around 532 AD that the Alkan ruler Mihirakula suffered a great defeat by the hands of Aulikaras and the Maukris. So the fact that this defeat of the Alkan Huns coincides with the Hepthalite preoccupation with the Sassanids means that these Hephthalites most likely played a major role in maintaining the Alkan power. But now, since they were preoccupied with the Sassanids, they could not provide the military support which these Alkan Huns needed. And that is why one of the main reasons behind the defeat of Mihirakula was the fact that Hephthalites were no longer there to support these Alkan Huns. So by around 532 AD, Mihirakula has been defeated by the Aulikaras and the Maukris, and he retreats back to his base in Gandhara and Punjab. Now one question which could be asked is why these Alkan Huns did not try to reconquer the lost territory. The answer to this in my view is quite simple. They do not have the Hepthalite support during this period. We all know how important the Hepthalite support, particularly the military support, was for the Alkan Huns. So because there was no military support from the Hephthalites, the Alkans did not try to reconquer the lost territory. The Hephthalites on their part were now fighting for their survival. They not only had to face the threat of the Sassanids under Khusro I, but now they were challenged by another power that rose in Mongolia. These were the Western Turks. It was these two powers, the Sassanids and the Western Turks, which ultimately destroyed the Hepthalite Empire. Although we do not know the final date of this destruction, but we can safely say that by 570 AD there was no Hepthalite power left. The loss of Hepthalite Empire meant that these Huns were now on their own. So there was no chance of the revival of Alkan Hun power. And because of this lesser status of these Alkan Huns, we find that the history of the Alkan Huns who came after Mihirakula is not well known. We also do not know when Mihirakula died. So the history of the later Huns is a matter of debate. But if we look at the Indian sources, we find that there are two sources which can provide us some information. The first are the Puranas. In all of the Puranas, the Hunas are mentioned, and these Puranas tell us that these Hunas had a total of 11 rulers. Now, except Vishnu Puran, all of the Puranas tell us that these Hunas ruled for a total of 300 years. Vishnu Puran tells us that these Hunas ruled for a total of 130 years. So there is this information which is available in the Puranas. The second source provides us a significantly more detail. This is Raj Tarangani of Kalhan. Now in Raj Tarangani, we find that there are two lists. The first list tells us the successors of Mihirakula. The second list, on the other hand, tells us the successors of Tormand. Now if you look at these two lists, you will find that the chronology does not make any sense. And here lies the main defect with this source. Kalhan, the author of Raj Tarangani, has arranged these lists as he saw fit. So in order to recreate a credible chronology, we have to look at other sources. But what we find is that there is no other source available. We have only Raj Tarangani as our sole authority. So based on Raj Tarangani, one historian has tried to reconstruct the history of the later Hunas, and this scholar is Atreyi Biswas. In the book, The Political History of the Hunas in India, Atreyi Biswas gives us this chronology. According to this chronology, Mihirakula was succeeded by Pravarsen II. Pravarsen II was the son of Tormand. So here, Pravarsen II and Mihirakula were brothers. Now, Atreyi Biswas argues that the end of the later Hunas happened in the reign of Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir was dethroned by Pratapaditya in around 657 AD. And after dethroning Yudhishthir, Pratapaditya established the Karkot dynasty in Kashmir. Now, if you ask me, I think that this chronology, because it is based on Raj Tarangani, is not very credible. This is mainly because that we do not have any other evidence or source to cross-check whether the chronology which is provided or whether the details which are provided in Raj Tarangani are true or not. So, in short, we have to wait for more evidence to learn about the history of the Hunas after Mihirakula. Now, it is true that we do not have enough information about the Hunas who came after Mihirakula, but we should also not forget that these Hunas still controlled the region of Gandhara, Kashmir, and parts of Punjab. And throughout the 6th century AD, they had presence in this region. But they are not the threat which they once were. This can be seen from the reference of Hunas in Bana's Harshcharitra. Here, the father of Harsh, Prabhakar Vardhan, is described as tiger to the Huna deer. So you can see how the fate of the Hunas have changed significantly. Now, if you want to know more about the Hunas, please watch this playlist. Thank you for watching.